Before we begin today's presentation, please note the following, which apply to those joining us online. There are some features that are enabled for you today. For most of you, these options will appear on the bottom of your screen, although that may differ based on how you're viewing this meeting. Presentations will be delivered in English and French, with simultaneous interpretation available in both languages. You have the option to select your language of choice as indicated on your screen. For most, this option will appear at the bottom of your screen, although that may differ based on how you are viewing this meeting. If you'd like to hear the presentation in English, select English. If you'd like to hear it all in French, select French. The default setting will allow you to hear the information in the language that it is being presented. You can change your selection at any time. Closed captioning is provided for those joining us online. You have the option to turn it on by selecting your language of choice and clicking join, or off by clicking stop. You're welcome to submit questions at any time during the presentation. We'll answer as many as possible at the end, after the presentations have been completed. Simply click on the question box and type your questions there. A recording of today's webcast will be available on the plan's website in the coming days. Good afternoon, everyone. Bienvenue. Welcome to this year's annual information meeting. My name is Kathy Greenbank, and I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees of the New Brunswick Public Service Pension Plan. We are very pleased to be able to meet with you today, and thank you for joining us. Before we continue, it's important that we acknowledge the land on which we gather. As this is a virtual presentation, we, the board, and our presenters are located throughout the province of New Brunswick. The land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Pescataway peoples. We acknowledge and thank the Indigenous peoples whose presence marks this territory on which we now gather. We pay respect to the elders, past and present, and descendants of this land. We honor the knowledge keepers and seek their guidance as we strive to develop closer relationships with the Indigenous people in New Brunswick. The Board of Trustees is composed of the following individuals. In addition to me, there are 8 other individuals who have been appointed to the board as trustees. Ross Galbraith, Vice Chair of the Board and an international representative for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Sébastien Deschênes, Vice President of the Edmonton campus of the Université de Moncton and Professor of Accounting. Paula Doucette, President of the New Brunswick Nurses Union. Renee Laforêt, Vice President of Strategic Procurement and Corporate Services at Service New Brunswick. Jim Meehan, Deputy Minister with the Department of Social Development. Susie Prudag, President of the New Brunswick Union of Public and Private Employees. Marilyn Quinn, Registered Nurse and past President of the New Brunswick Nurses Union. And Odette Robichaud, retired court stenographer and past president of CUPE Local 1840 and past CUPE Regional Vice President. We also have 2 observers on the board, Chris Russell, Red Seal plumber and a maintenance repair worker with the New Brunswick Community College, Lee Sprague, Executive Director for the New Brunswick Union of Public and Private Employees. In addition, 2 guests join us on a regular basis. Peter Hanlon, guest of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 37, and Matt Hiltz, guest of the New Brunswick Nurses Union. As for myself, I'm a retired professional accountant, and I have been on the board since 2017. Your board members have diverse backgrounds, which strengthens the board and its decision-making. Each of us has been appointed to the board by either the provincial government or one of the following unions: the New Brunswick Nurses Union, the New Brunswick Union, Local 37 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and by the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Locals 1252, 1840, and 5017. Many of us are also members of the plan. We have a fiduciary duty to the NBPSPP and must act in the best interest of the plan and its members when administering the affairs of the plan. Failure to do so can result in disciplinary actions or revocation of our appointment. We also have two guests joining us today on behalf of two of the plan's service providers. Eve Plourde, an actuary and partner with the plan's independent actuarial firm TELUS Health, and Sean Hewitt, President and CEO of Vescor Inc., the plan's investment manager and administration services provider. Sean is a new face to the organization, having joined Vescor in April of this year. Welcome to your first annual information meeting, Sean. This year, we also saw the retirement of John Sinclair, Vescor's former president and CEO, whose support and approach was instrumental to the NBPSPP from day one. Thank you, John. This year, the plan reached a special milestone, 10 years since the plan converted to the NBPSPP on January 1st, 2014. The goal of that conversion was simple: to provide current and future members with a secure and sustainable lifetime pension that they could count on. What has been accomplished in the past 10 years? On behalf of the board, I'm extremely pleased to be in a position to share several positive outcomes, all of which occurred in an interesting and at times tumultuous decade in the financial markets. Here are three things that are important for you to know about your plan. The first thing you should know is how well funded your plan is. Your plan is in a surplus position. In 2014, the plan was barely fully funded at 100.3%, with just enough assets to cover its liabilities. In other words, having the ability to pay pensions to you, its members, into the future. Today, that funded status has reached 111%. As you can see from the graphic, funded status fluctuates based on factors such as investment returns. Our overall solid investment returns have contributed to your plan's very positive funded position. Second, your plan is provided full indexing. In other words, full cost of living adjustments that match inflation. It has been a significant achievement to be able to ensure that all plan members, whether retired or not, have had annual increases applied to their pension to help contend with inflation. This is a rare benefit in today's pension world, and many pension plans do not have these provisions. Some plans who do have not been able to award cost of living adjustments. This means that those receiving pensions don't see their pensions grow, although the cost of living certainly does due to inflation. You will note that for January 1st, 2025, the cost of living adjustment that will be awarded is higher than the average change in the Consumer Price Index. This is because your plan was in a position to provide full cost of living adjustment and a catch-up for the 2 years where it provided a total of 0.59% less than the change in CPI. Our actuary, Eve Plourde, will speak to this shortly. The third item you should know is the overall growth of your plan. Today, our plan is comprised of over 45,000 members residing in New Brunswick and around the world. Over the past decade, this plan has grown by this membership has grown by 10,000 members, or 27%, while the fund's assets have grown over 55%, from $5.9 billion in 2014 to over $9.2 billion at the end of 2023. The investment return rates the plan must achieve to remain sustainable continue to be surpassed. Much more detail in all of this will be provided by our guest presenters. I am pleased to welcome Yves Plourde, who will speak to the plan's most recent actuarial valuation report. This report, prepared annually, is a very important tool for us as a board. It helps us guide our decisions, provides a snapshot of the plan's financial health. Yves will speak to it today. Before Yves begins, a quick reminder that simultaneous interpretation is available in both languages today. By selecting the interpretation button that appears on your screen, likely at the bottom, you have the option to select the language in which you prefer to hear presentations. Thank you. Yves.
Great. Thanks a lot, Madam Chair. So I will present starting in English, and about halfway through the presentation, I will switch to French. So my name is Yves Plourde, and I'm an actuary with TELUS Health. We were formerly LifeWorks and Morneau Chappelle before that. So the company name changed a few times over the last few years, but we're still the same team here in Fredericton, providing the same quality services to your Board of Trustees. I'm pleased to be here today to walk you through the results of the most recent actuarial valuation of the New Brunswick Public Service Pension Plan as at January 1st, 2024. I'll start with a short summary of the membership in the plan, review the evolution of the assets and the plan liabilities over the years, discuss the resulting financial position, not only at January 1st, 2024, but through the recent past, and review how the plan's financial position was affected by the recent bout of inflation that we have all experienced. I will then review the risk management test results that we tracked annually, provide information on cost of living adjustments that was awarded by the Board of Trustees for January 1st, 2025, and end my presentation with a talk about traffic lights. Stay tuned for that. But let's first start with the plan membership. You can see that the number of active members shown by the tall green bars stabilized at just 19,000 from 2020 to 2022. Started to grow again last year, increasing above the 19,000 threshold at January 1st, 2023. And then we've now exceeded the mark of 20,000 with active members just short of 20,500 as of January 1st, 2024. It is healthy for the plan to see its numbers of active members increase because it actually slows down the otherwise natural maturation of the plan. And it reduces the overall risk associated with providing benefits. The number of retirees shown in purple bars is continuing to grow slightly every year, as is expected, for a total of 18,642 at January 1st, 2024. We do expect continued growth in the number of retirees for about another 10 to 15 years, but it's going to be at a slowing pace, and then this growth is expected to cease and the number of retirees will remain stable for a while. If we look on the asset side, the pension fund depicted here by the blue bars has increased significantly, as Kathy mentioned, since 2014, from about $6 billion at that time to its highest at about $9.4 billion actually at January 1st, 2022. After a reduction in assets in 2022, it's now increased back to $9.25 billion at January 1st, 2024. The year 2022 was particularly difficult due to the impact of high inflation and ever-increasing interest rates, putting negative pressures on investment returns of pension plans. However, we saw 2023 provide more reasonable investment results with a return for 2023 of 7.15% for your plan. This return allowed the pension fund to start to grow again after a difficult year 2022. Now, in order to be able to determine the financial position of the plan, we need to compare these assets to the plan's liability. The plan's liability is a representation of how much money we believe should be in the pension fund at the time of the valuation in order to pay all the benefits that members have accrued up to the valuation date. In order to calculate the liability, we need to make many assumptions about the future. One of those assumptions is the discount rate that we use to put a value on your pension plan liability. The discount rate represents a very conservative estimate of expected investment returns for the future. And it is used to discount to today's date all expected future benefit payments from the pension plan. We use a discount rate of 5% per annum for the plan. This assumption is very conservative because we actually believe the pension fund can be expected to earn over the long term about 7% per annum, being a full 2% per annum above the discount rate. Using such a conservative discount rate provides us with the expectation that more often than not, plan investments should generate extra funds compared to our discount rate assumption, which will continue to assist in the future in securing the benefits under the plan and provide future cost of living adjustments. Over the last 10 years, the plan's liability, identified by the orange bars, went from just under $6 billion in 2014 to above $8.3 billion on January 1st, 2024. You will notice that the assets in the plan increased faster than the liability over the period spanning from 2014 to 2022. That's due to the fact that we use a conservative discount rate in the calculation of the liability. This allowed us to build a surplus in the plan, which was able to absorb the downturn of the year 2022, and also importantly, to continue to provide the trustees again this year with the ability to give you a significant amount of COLA, as we will see later and as Kathy has already alluded to. To ultimately determine the financial position of the pension plan, the trustees add to the assets the amount of contributions made to the plan in excess of the cost of the accruing benefits over the next 15 years. On January 1st, 2024, those excess contributions for the 15 years following the valuation date represent an amount of over $1.5 billion, which when added to the assets, represents a total adjusted assets of just shy of $10.8 billion. When you divide these assets by the liability, you obtain a funded ratio that we call the open group funded ratio. So as you can see in this graph, this ratio has remained well above 100 over the last 10 years. It is a different ratio than the ratio Kathy presented earlier, in that includes the present value of excess contributions that I just talked about. And so the difference between the original ratio presented by Kathy and this one, it's just that present value of excess contributions are included, and it's important to include those assets in order for a board of trustees to make decisions about COLA. So as you can see in this graph, this ratio has remained well above 100% over the last 10 years, which means that we believe there's enough assets in the plan, including those excess contributions to be received, to provide for all the benefits payable for the lifetime of active members and retirees. The funded ratio has in fact increased from a level of 121.5 in 2014 to an ultimate peak of 134.8 at January 1st, 2022. This period includes, among other events, the start of the pandemic, which occurred in March 2020. The financial markets at the time retreated in an unprecedented manner, hitting a low at about the end of March 2020, which did reduce the funded ratio for the plan at that time to about 122.8%. However, the markets rebounded almost as quickly as they had came down. And by January 1st, 2021, the funded ratio had returned to a level in excess of 130%, to about 130.4, and continued its growth in 2021, hitting an all-time high of 134.8% at January 1st, 2022. As you are aware, the year 2022 was an unsettled period for the markets. So we continued to endure the effects of a pandemic, which was still causing major disruptions in some parts of the world. We experienced serious disruptions to supply chains. Oil and energy prices were very elevated. And to complicate everything, Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. So all of this caused significant uncertainty in the markets and, very importantly, caused significant inflation levels not seen in decades, accompanied by unprecedented increases in interest rates enacted by the various central banks in order to fight that inflation. Nonetheless, the plan was able to finish the year with a funded ratio of 130.1 at January 1st, 2023. Now, for the current year, you can see that at January 1st, 2024, the funded ratio has moved basically sideways from its level at 2023 to a level of 129.4%. Over 2023, even with investment returns of 7.15%, well above our discount rate of 5%, the plan's funded ratio basically did not change from the prior year, reducing slightly to 129.4. So this continues to be a very healthy financial position by all measures. Other than immediate impact on investment returns, the other main reason why the plan has ceased to improve its funded status over the last 2 years is directly related to the fact that unprecedented amounts of COLA have been provided, or cost of living adjustments have been provided to active and retired members. In fact, over the last 2 years, the plan has provided total COLA of over 10.5%. This represents more COLA in the last 2 years than the sum of all COLA provided in the prior 6 years combined. It's interesting to note that from the graph that we see here, that while inflation was kept in check during the years 2014 to 2022 or about, the plan was able, as a general trajectory, to continuously improve its financial position. That period was used to prepare for more tumultuous times. So while inflation has spiked now over the last 2 years, the good work of the prior 8 years has allowed the trustees to prioritize providing elevated COLAs to plan members. This caused the plan's financial status to pause its increasing trajectory while those elevated COLAs are provided. It does now appear that the battle against inflation is starting to bear fruit. Every month, Statistics Canada publishes its annual inflation statistics, and for every month in 2024 so far, the annual inflation rate has been below 3%, which we had not seen since the beginning of 2021. In fact, its last published figures on indexing for the month of August 2024 pegged inflation at 2%, basically reaching the Bank of Canada's target rate for the first time in over 3.5 years. I certainly hope that this return to normalcy with respect to inflation will continue into the future. If we now take our binoculars and look towards the future, let's assume that we have binoculars that look into the future. In the actuarial world, that's called a stochastic analysis. We conduct one of those every year for the trustees. It does reveal that we can expect the increasing trajectory of the funded ratio for the plan will start again and continue in the future, as it has during the period of 2014 to 2022, now that this fight against inflation appears to be, for the most part, in the rearview mirror. Again, there will be bumps in the road, as it can be expected, but you can rest assured that with a funded ratio of about 130% as a starting point from today, your plan continues to maintain a significant buffer above 100% and therefore is ready to face the various market uncertainty and volatility that may lie ahead, just like it has faced the threat of inflation over the last 2 to 3 years. I'll now switch to French. Parlons maintenant des tests de gestion des risques effectués de façon annuelle.
Let's talk about annual risk management. It's about these will not be reduced in the next years. On this first test, it is at 99%, which means that in almost 99.15% of those studied, the benefits base is over the 97.5 prescribed by the Pensions Act. And it assures us that this is very much because it can continue to provide more adjustments for all the participants. The second management test consists of calculating what we can hope for in the next 20 years, and it's an average of the cost adjustment to living of the high percentage. The results of this second test is also very positive and indicates that there is good chances that the cost of living adjustment will continue. What brings me back to the inflation and adjustments to cost of living. Your plan was conceived for protection against inflation. At the rest, the inflation is measured by the increase of the Consumer Price Index as reported by Stat Canada every month. For the 12-month period ending June 30th, 2024, so taking into account the period from July 2023 to June 2024, the average increase in the Consumer Price Index, or inflation, in Canada was 3.11%. This is a significant reduction from inflation levels seen during the previous 2 years, over 5.5% in each year. Over those last 2 years, your plan provided COLAs in excess of 5% in each year, while inflation was at those higher levels. While providing high COLAs, there was nevertheless a small portion of inflation that was not covered by the awarded COLAs over the last 2 years. In fact, COLAs were lower than inflation by an amount of 0.32% January 1st, 23 and 0.27% as at January 1st, 2024. For those of you who may have listened to my remarks from last year, I had mentioned that when inflation would be coming down, it would be reasonable to expect the plan will be able to provide the COLA adjustment for catch-up that were not given the last couple of years. Well, I'm happy to report that the inflation now going down, the plan is in position this year to catch up the portion of inflation of the last 2 years that had not been covered by your COLA adjustments. The trustees were able to provide a COLA of 3.70% effective January 1st, 2025, and that adjustment includes the full inflation of last year and a portion that was not able to be covered in the 2 prior years. The COLA is therefore at a cost of $290.3 million.
It is a great achievement by the plan to have been in a position to provide COLAs which have now equaled full inflation since its conversion to a shared risk plan on January 1st, 2014, especially during times when inflation has spiked to levels not seen in decades. and it did so while increasing its funded level to about 130%.
The time
has now come to talk about traffic lights. The board is introducing a system of traffic lights this year. No, this is not a new investment or joint venture with a traffic light company, but rather a new communication tool that will be used by the board. The traffic light was identified as a quick and easy way to transmit information about the financial status of the pension plan and its ability to provide COLA. It is expected to be used in the future in most communication material issued by the trustees, such as newsletters, annual reports, and during the annual information meeting. The traffic light will change color depending on the level of the open group funded ratio of the plan. In turn, the level of the funded ratio provides you with an indication of the ability of the plan to provide COLA. Therefore, we hope that you will be in a position to appreciate how healthy the plan is and its ability to provide COLA based on the color of the traffic light that will be revealed each year when actuarial valuation results are available. So let's start with the green light. A green light indicates that the funded ratio for the plan exceeds 120%. In turn, a funded ratio of over 120% indicates that the plan is in a healthy financial position and that it can provide COLA for that year. As you can appreciate, with a funded ratio that is currently at a level of 129.4%, the plan is currently showing a green light. A yellow light would start to be shown on communication material when the plan's funded ratio falls between 105 to 120%. This yellow light would mean that COLA can be granted most of the time, but that it may be less than full inflation. That means that there will also be years, while under a yellow light, that COLA may not be provided. Finally, a red light would mean that the plan's funded ratio has fallen below 105%. This means that the plan is not able to award COLA while the funded ratio is at that level. Furthermore, there's a heightened risk of increases in contributions, as those would appear when and if the plan's funded ratio falls below 100% for 2 consecutive years. Finally, under a red light, the possibility of a reduction in benefits will be of concern. Trustees certainly hope that they will never have to show the plan's membership a red light, but the communication tool allows for it if the financial situation deteriorates to that point. The probability of this scenario happening is very low. If we now look back, and if the trustees had initiated this communication tool from the first day in 2014, we can confirm that since its conversion to a shared risk plan, the plan has consistently been in a green light status because the funded ratio has never dropped below 120%. This means that the plan has remained in a healthy financial position over the last decade, with an ability to provide consistent and predictable COLA throughout these years. I hope that you found the information provided interesting and useful, and that it provided you with a better understanding of how resilient your plan is, not only to market volatility, but also to inflation variations. I also hope that the new traffic light communication tool will provide all members with a quick way to determine the financial health of the plan and its ability to provide COLA. I thank you for your attention, and I will remain available for the question period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eve. We are excited to introduce the stoplight concept. Look for it in future newsletters, all of which are available on the plan's website. They are an easy way to know the outlook of the plan. We remain in the green and we strive to stay there. Next, we will have a presentation from Vescor. Vescor is the plan's chosen investment manager and administration services provider. Providing us an update in these key areas is Vescor's new president and chief executive officer, Sean Hewitt. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you, Kathy, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today and allowing myself and my family to feel welcome as a newcomer in this beautiful province. I now have 5 months under my belt as the president and CEO of Vescor, and about 6 months as a resident of Fredericton. While I'm relatively new to Vescor, I have known of it for quite some time and through the pension and investment industry. Vescor is known in Canada to be an industry leader and strong advocate for best practices in corporate governance and pension management. In my prior role, when confronted with an interesting work problem, I would often look to the Vescor team to provide industry thought leadership. Vescor continues to be supported by an excellent team, and it's my honor to present to you all today as a representative of your pension administrator and investment manager. Now, diving into the next slide, a little bit about Vescor first. We are 150 plus professionals located here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. We are an integrated investment management, pension, and benefits administration organization. We are the largest investment manager in Atlantic Canada and one of the largest nationally. And importantly, all of our staff are members of the New Brunswick Public Service Pension Plan. It's a condition of employment. We also contribute to the pension plan in much in the same way that all of you do. Moving to the next slide, a little bit more about who we are. We were created by Legislative Assembly of New Brunswick under the Vescor Act. We were created in 2016, but importantly, we remain independent of government. We are regulated and supervised as an investment fund manager and portfolio manager by the New Brunswick Financial and Consumer Services Commission. And we are jointly owned by the New Brunswick Public Service Pension Plan and the New Brunswick Teachers Pension Plan. We are independent, we are non-for-profit, and we are committed to serving our clients and their members. Across all plans, Vescor has approximately $21 billion under management at the end of 2023, of which the public service is a significant part, with assets totaling $9.25 billion, or roughly 45% of the total. We serve on behalf of our clients 111,000 pension plan members. 45,000 of that membership is for the public service. And moving on to the next slide. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the investments. There are 4 numbers that I'll walk us through. As mentioned, the Public Service Pension Plan has $9.25 billion at the end of last year, and translating into growth of over $3 billion over the past 10 years. Significant when we consider how many pensions this represents. 10-year annualized return is equal to 6.61%, which has exceeded the actuarial discount rate of 5%, which has enabled the plan to continue to provide regular cost of living adjustments, as mentioned by Eve and Kathy. 0.14% is the cost of providing investment management services to your plan. Unlike for-profit investment managers, like in banks, who charge significantly more, our ratio is one of the most cost-effective in Canada. That's what makes Vescor different. We are a non-for-profit company focused on growth for our clients. 0.14% translates into, for every $100 of invested, Vescor's costs total 14 cents. And we benchmark that cost against national peer benchmarking studies. And our costs are approximately 20 basis points, or 0.2% per year lower than the median Canadian pension plan of similar size. That translates into roughly $19 million in lower annual fees for the New Brunswick Public Service Pension Plan, which is significant. That translates into roughly 650 additional pensions that can be paid by deploying our low-cost, cost-efficient approach. Moving on to the next slide, we'll talk about investment returns, and I have an update here through June 30th of 2024. Through the June 30th, we have earned an investment return that is slightly higher than 5%, modestly above the investment benchmark return over the period. And over the 12-month period, we have earned a return in excess of 9%. The last 12 months have been characterized by relatively high returns driven by strong global equity markets. Over longer periods, we have earned an annualized return of 6.1% over the 4-year period and 6.8% since January 2014, both significantly outperforming their investment benchmarks. The investment approach is actively managed by our investment team here in Fredericton under the leadership of our Chief Investment Officer, John Spinney. This outperformance over the benchmark is very significant. The added value since 2014 equates to roughly $600 million in excess return net of all fees and expenses. And I'll move on to the next slide and talk about the pension administration function, which is split up into 5 key categories. First off, the pension administration handles the day-to-day administration of the plan. This group provides members with formal pension estimates, outlines the retirement options, and sets up pension payroll. Member Services team provides support to active, deferred, and retired members and surviving spouses, beneficiaries, and employers. You can reach this team 5 days a week throughout the day for any questions that you may have. They conduct member presentations and work closely with employers. They have presented to well over 1,000 plan members last year between online webcasts and in-person presentations. Our communications teams manage the plan's website on behalf of the board, work with the board to create newsletters, organize this meeting, and responsible for outreach to members. The Board Support Services Group offers governance support and pension plan governance best practice expertise to the Board of Trustees. And corporate services includes things like accounting, auditing, human resources, and other related functions. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the plan administration numbers. 7,100 represents the number of members who have retired and started drawing their lifetime pension benefit over the last 10 years. That has been indexed to inflation through regularly approved cost of living adjustments approved by the Board of Trustees. In 2023, we had over 12,000 member contacts coming into our member services team, which includes emails, phone calls, in-person meetings. All of that is serviced right here in Fredericton. Those 12,000 member contacts translated into 4,800 member applications that we processed in 2023, which includes official pension estimates, retirements, purchase of service, and other transactions. And importantly, if you did interact with someone from our member services team, you would have received a short survey. We are pleased to report that our member service satisfaction scores remain quite high with the 95% satisfaction rate. And lastly, our cost per member equals $108. And that is the second lowest among a national peer group that we benchmark ourselves to. Moving on to the next slide, just want to remind everyone on the call that there are plenty of resources available. If you would like to know more information about your pension plan, including planning for retirement, or additional information about the investment program or VESCOR's approach, please visit the plan's website and VESCOR's website. For example, we annually issue a responsible investment report, and we will be able to share our 3rd annual report soon. Keep an eye out on the website for that. In summary, we just want to emphasize we serve as a central resource for plan members and employers and have an incredible team based here in New Brunswick. If you have a question, please don't hesitate to call. We have listed the number on the screen. We serve to be a trusted advisor for your board of trustees and operate as a non-for-profit committed to long-term retirement security for NB pension plan members. I'll thank you all for joining us, and I'll be here to answer any questions that you have. I'll turn it back to you, Kathy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. That completes our formal presentation for today. We'll now move on to the Q&A, question and answer period. I'm pleased to welcome fellow trustee Paula Doucette to monitor this period for us. Paula.
Thank you, Kathy. Merci, Kathy. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis heureuse d'être ici avec vous.
Hi everyone, I'm really happy to be with you today. Like Kathy mentioned earlier, I'm Paula Doucette and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees.
If you have questions for our Board of Trustees or our guests who have presented to us today, please submit your questions by clicking on the Ask a Question button that appears on your screen. Note that if you have questions specific to your own pension, we encourage you to contact our plans member services team. And Sean had those numbers up there just earlier on a slide. And that service is, again, provided by VESCOR. In addition to several members having submitted questions online prior to today's meeting, we will answer as many as possible through this Q&A session. I'm going to start with a question for Sean. This was emailed in prior to today's meeting, and it states, why doesn't VESCOR publicly report on its investments in companies with exposure to the fossil fuel industry? Since you service government, I would expect more transparency. I have divested from fossil fuel investments in other areas of my life. Why can't I have the information to know where my money is being invested when it comes to my pension?
It's an excellent question. Thank you, Paula. VESCOR does publish its longstanding responsible investment guidelines to ensure that we're covering sustainability objectives within each of our investment programs that VESCOR has. In addition, VESCOR also publishes our annual responsible investment report. Our responsible investment report includes analysis consistent with the recommendations from the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. That report shows VESCOR's carbon emissions for the entire portfolio. And importantly, it shows the year-over-year changes in carbon emissions. Later this year, we'll be releasing our third annual responsible investment report, which will include metrics for the public service pension plan on a standalone basis as well.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Another one coming your way. This question was also emailed earlier than today's meeting. And it's, who is on the board of directors and investors of VESCOR?
Perfect. Yeah, the members of our independent board of directors are listed on the website in our annual report. They are appointed by our owners upon completion of a thorough recruitment process and consistent with the needs identified within a skills matrix maintained by the board to ensure that there's appropriate diversity of board experience. We don't have investors per se. We are a non-for-profit entity, but we are owned jointly by the New Brunswick Public Service Pension Plan and the New Brunswick Teachers Pension Plan.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Eve, this one is coming your way. Again, these questions were emailed prior to. The plan's funding policy only looks out a maximum of 20 years. As a 30-year-old active contributor to the plan, this means the policy plans does not currently try to guarantee my benefits into retirement. How can I have confidence in my retirement if VESCOR isn't even looking that far out?
That's a very good question. And I'll try to split that into a couple parts. The first part is what's in the funding policy over 20 years. And that's the period over which we look at risk, determine our risk management test. So in terms of determining and quantifying the investment risk and the risk that the plan can take, establish its investment policy, we do use 20 years because after 20 years, there's not a whole lot of additional information from a risk perspective that you can gather that might be useful from that perspective. Having said that, when we calculate liabilities under the pension plan, we take the present value of all benefit payments that are expected to be paid on behalf of everybody in the plan for their lifetime. And that includes from the youngest person in the plan, which is probably around 18 years old. We project their benefit until over their lifespan. And so from the perspective of the liability that we show and we calculate for the pension plan, we don't stop at 20 years. We don't assume every pension stops in 20 years. We calculate the present value of all benefits that are expected to be paid over the lifetime of the pension or the members until the youngest member is expected to pass away. And so there's enough money, you can be assured that there is enough money in the pension plan at this point in time to pay all pensions for the lifetime of people. The 20-year period in the funding policy is related to analysis of risk, which is more meaningful in the first 20 years. And after 20 years provides a lot less to the analysis of risk. I hope that clarifies a bit the difference between what we're holding as liability, which is for whole lifetime, and what we use in terms of quantifying risk.
Great, thank you, Eve. I have another one coming to you. Since other pension plans in the PSSA are not as well funded as ours, is there any risk of ours being rated by other funds to cover their shortfalls? And is there any chance the government will cut back on their contributions if we are well funded?
Okay, interesting questions. I believe here the person who asked the question is talking about other plans in the public service or public sector sphere that we know may be experiencing some funding challenges at this point in time. And I can guarantee you that there is nothing within the current framework or law that would allow any other pension plan to come and raid your pension plan for their own benefit. So that's not a thing. It's not going to happen. What may be causing this concern at this point in time might be that the government has enacted a law back in December of last year called the Pension Plan Sustainability and Transfer Act, in which it did identify 5 pension plans to move into shared risk plans, and your pension plan being one of those plans that have been identified to receive some of these unfunded plan members into your plan. But that's not something that is forced at any cost on the public service pension plan. The government has also guaranteed that they would provide the funding necessary to shore up these troubled pension plans, such that if you do accept them, they will come at no negative impact to your members. In fact, FCNB, who regulates pension plans in New Brunswick, have issued a draft guideline on rules that they expect will be followed when pension plans are merging or when a shared risk plan like yours is accepting another pension plan. And it cannot be done according to these guidelines if the funded status of the receiving pension plan is negatively affected as a result of that. So the guidelines do provide for the protection of the funded ratio of the existing plan and the members of the existing plan. So there is not, from my part, a concern that these pension plan will raid. And even if your pension plan was to welcome one of these plans into the public service plan, there is going to be additional funds that are going to make sure that this plan is not negatively affected and its members are not negatively affected by the fact that it will welcome these members. The other part of the question was, is there any chance that the government will cut back on their contributions if the plan is well funded? Currently, in the arrangement that the government entered into with the unions and the public, when the public service pension plan was created, is that government will continue to contribute and the cost will be matched ultimately 50-50 with the members, and we do expect that to continue. There are provisions in the current arrangement for reduction in contributions if the plan is very well funded. But those reduction in contributions would not only be enjoyed by government, but also will be enjoyed by the active members of the pension plan. And so if the plan is well funded, we can certainly expect at some point, and that point is when it's funded over 140% on the basis that I've presented, then there's an ability for a reduction in contribution, not a cessation of contribution, but a reduction in contribution from both the employer and the employees.
Great. Thank you, Eve. Still staying in the vein of funding and performing well, I'm going to ask Sean to address this next question that was typed into the Q&A box. And it says, it looks like the fund is performing well and is well managed. Do you benchmark performance against other funds with similar investment objectives? And if so, how do we compare? Sean?
Thank you, Paula. Yes, we certainly do look at our performance relative to other pension plans. And over time, what it shows is that we generally have returns above the median, somewhat above the median, but it comes at far less risk than the average pension plan. So from a risk-adjusted return perspective, Bestcor's performance compares very, very favorably. I think it's important to note that while that analysis is good to keep track of and just to be aware of where pension plan returns are generally, we develop the investment approach in conjunction with the Board of Trustees and upon advice from the actuary on required rate of return, and we design a investment program that is suited to establish retirement security for this pension plan. So it's a customized approach, very much with the lens to enhance retirement security and put the plan in the position to continue to provide regular cost of living adjustments over time. That's the overall objective, certainly. So I hope that answered the question, and I'll turn it back to you, Paula. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Just in the essence of time, I noticed we have about 2 minutes left, but we still have a few questions here that haven't been answered. So if the indulgence of the audience that is participating with us today and to our Board of Trustees and guests, I would go through potentially 3 more questions, and we'll see where we are at that point in timing. So Eve, I have another question for you. With the addition of CPP2, would I expect to see an even larger portion of my pension deducted when I start drawing CPP, thus making CPP2 not a net positive? Traditionally, the amount of CPP received at 65 is similar to the reduced pension amount at the same time.
So that's a good question. So this CPP2 is new in the sense that employees have started to contribute towards that enhanced CPP benefit on January 1st of this year. And it's a contribution that's based on earnings over and above the regular threshold that CPP has historically established. So currently, the regular threshold for CPP is $68,500 or so, and that CPP2 would be contributions over the next $10,000 of earnings that people will start to contribute over. I think it's phased into a couple of years, so $5,000 additional this year and $10,000 next year, and it'll stick to about $10,000 more than the regular cap. And that benefit will be added to your benefit. Your public service pension plan has not been adjusted negatively or reduced to take into account the fact that you will get an additional CPP benefit. And so in terms of using the words of the person here, it is a total net positive. It's a whole positive to your pension. There are no adjustments to the formula of the public service plan to try to take that into account at all. So I hope that answers the question.
Great. Thank you, Eve. I'm going to go to Kent next. This question was posed prior to today's meeting. And it's, if I have 10 years of service and continue to work for the government of New Brunswick after the age of 65, can I still contribute to my pension?
Hello, yes, thank you for the question, Paula. Great question. If you're an active employee, you would keep contributing past the age of 65. The one thing to keep in mind is that because of the Income Tax Act, you would need to start drawing that pension December the year that you would turn 71. A person can keep working, but at that point, they wouldn't contribute anymore and need to draw a pension.
Perfect. Thank you, Kent. Just looking here, I have another one for Eve, and what time we're at, 1 minute after. It's about COLA, Eve.
Yes.
When you publish COLA numbers, you mentioned that it benefits retirees as well as active members. Can you clarify how this benefits the active members?
Yes, absolutely. And so that goes back to the way the pension is calculated when you accrue your pension or you build your pension over your career. Under the public service pension plan, when you build your pension over your career, what we do is we take 1.4% of your earnings up to the YMP or the 68,000 and 2% above that. And that's your accrual for that current year. And every year you use your earnings to build your pension and you add those amounts together. And what happens is, as you build your pension, if you're not using more recent earnings to calculate what you are going to be paid for an accrual that happened 10 years ago, then you would lose value as you build your pension. So as an active member, it's important that we take those prior accrual rate, maybe based on your earnings in 2014-15, and we provide cost of living on those. And so the way this pension plan works is that it increased the accrued pension by the cost of living so that the amount that you've accrued maintains the purchasing power while you're accruing it. It was not necessary in the old version of the public service plan when your pension was calculated using your earnings when you retired or your final 5 years of earnings when you retired, because those earnings were recent. The new formula under the public service plan uses all your earnings over your career to calculate your pension. And so therefore, in order for it to maintain its purchasing power, it's important that what you accrue be indexed with COLA. And that's why it is an important part of building your pension as an active member.
Great. Thank you, Eve. I have one last question, and I just want to point out to the folks that have been putting questions into the Q&A box. Anything that's not answered here today, the folks that are helping with this meeting today are pulling all of those questions, and they will be answered, and it will be up on our PSPP website in the coming days to ensure that all of your questions get addressed. So one last question. I like how they put this. It's a newbie question. Never apologize for questions. Can you explain again what are excess contributions? Eve?
Yes, absolutely. And so it's important to understand that when we calculate the liability for the pension plan, we don't include the value of future cost of living adjustments that may be granted by the Board of Trustees. That's to be decided every year based on the funded status of the plan. And so contributions that are made by members and the employer have been determined or based upon a fact that we are intending to provide COLA into the future. And so they're higher than the cost of the benefits that are accruing during the year for the members. And so that difference between what members and the employers are currently paying into the pension plan and the cost of providing the pension for that year of accrual, because every year that you contribute to the plan, you accrue one more year of service that will build your pension and that will increase your pension. That has a cost. It does not include the cost of future COLA. Your contribution is meant to include the cost of future COLA. And so therefore there is an excess or an additional amount of contribution compared to the cost of providing the base pension. That's what we call excess contribution. So their contribution over and above the cost of providing the next year accrual of pension, and it's used to secure the plan, but also to provide future COLA to plan members.
Great. Thank you, Yves. Bon, nous allons maintenant conclure notre séance des questions-réponses.
We will now conclude this question period, and if you do have questions that you weren't able to ask, you can always do it by email or by phone.
As I mentioned, a reminder that any question that wasn't answered live today will be posted in the coming days on our website, the PSPP website, hosted by VESCOR, so that we can ensure that all of your questions and your comments get addressed. Also, I want to let folks know that a copy of today's recorded meeting will also be available on the plan's website. So, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, and we're only 6 minutes over, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you. Merci pour partager aujourd'hui avec nous autres.
Thank you for sharing with us today.
Meeting, and I'd like to wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you and merci.